Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Sergeant Rod Valdivia. We warmly welcome the family of Private Ian Scott McDowell, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools: from New South Wales, Kincumber Public School and Carnwall Public School, and from Queensland, Moreton Bay Boys College, Manly West. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Children, please sit. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we pay tribute to Private Ian Scott McDowell. Born in Brisbane on the 6th of June 1922, Ian Scott McDowell was the son of Andrew and Marjorie McDowell. Growing up in the Brisbane suburb of Hawthorn, the young Ian McDowell gained employment as a commercial artist after leaving school. At the outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939, McDowell was determined to do his duty and enlist in the services, but was just 17 years old, too young to enlist. He came from a family with a strong history of service. His father had served in the First World War and had been wounded twice and awarded the Military Medal for bravery. Biding his time, Ian McDowell decided to leave Brisbane and travel around Queensland, picking up casual work as he went. At Gayndah, inland from Maryborough, he picked oranges before making his way north to Atherton tablelands. Following his return to Brisbane, the 19-year-old McDowell was now eligible to enlist. This he did on the 22nd of December 1941, enlisting in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Following his initial training, McDowell was posted to the 8th Pioneer Company and then to the 2nd 18th Infantry Training Battalion. He quickly rose through the ranks, gaining promotion to sergeant. But after declining the opportunity to become an officer, he voluntarily reverted back to the rank of private. On the 16th of March 1943, McDowell embarked in Townsville for overseas service in Papua. Following his arrival in Port Moresby, he was posted to the newly raised 1st Australian Parachute Refolding Platoon of the Australian Army Ordnance Corps. This new unit was raised in order to supply ground forces in remote locations in Papua and New Guinea by parachute drop. Parachute resupply was an integral component of Australian forces' advances across Papua and New Guinea. McDowell's platoon formed close ties with the US Army's 503rd Parachute Infantry Regiment. McDowell became good friends with American paratrooper Private First Class Ezra Lapidus, who would later lose his life during fighting in the Philippines in 1945. In between his work as a parachute rigger, McDowell spent his spare time painting and sketching. In July 1944, he left Port Moresby and returned to Australia. In June the following year, his unit again embarked for overseas service, this time sent to the island of Morotai. Not long after the day the war ended, on VP Day, the 15th of August 1945, McDowell's family received a letter from Ian that he was soon to be coming home. He had suffered an ankle injury on the 9th of August, has been assessed as being unfit for service outside of Australia, and was soon to be repatriated on a medical evacuation flight. On the 18th of September 1945, the C-47 Dakota medical evacuation flight carrying McDowell left Morotai. It refueled on Biak Island before disappearing somewhere over West Papua. McDowell and 29 others on board the flight, including a Royal Australian Air Force nurse, were reported missing, believed killed. It is the single worst air disaster in the history of the Royal Australian Air Force. The site of the crash was not found until 1968. One of the items recovered from the crash site was McDowell's dog tag with his name and service number. McDowell was the only member of his unit to die during wartime service. In keeping the link to the Royal Australian Army Ordnance Corps parachute riggers of today, the parachute rigger training facility at the Army School of Ordnance at Bandiana, opened in 2010, is named in his honour. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, among some 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ian Scott McDowell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.